Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Release!
Come on, Brent. Line's good.
Got real close.
The hair high, right? Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham. Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, literally alongside. We are recording in the same room for the first time since the Brier in 2020.
Yeah, over 3 years.
Yeah, how does it feel?
37 months.
37 months. Good math, Sean.
Thanks.
Look at you.
Right off the top.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's weird.
Definitely weird. We don't know how it sounds. Like, we'll see.
See?
But you're here for dinner tonight, and we have about 23 minutes until dinner's ready. So we thought, hey, let's hop on, talk about some of the rule changes announced by Curling Canada.
Yeah, so a lot going on, both in the world of curling and for us. My apologies. We did really want to get a mixed doubles worlds preview out last week, but unfortunately, real life got in the way. You were out of town. I was busy doing other stuff. Yeah. There's things going on in Ottawa that you may have read about that we won't discuss here that potentially are having an effect on certain things. So it's been busier than anticipated, so therefore couldn't get a preview out. My apologies for that. A quick update on the mixed doubles world, Scott.
Yes.
Jennifer Jones and Brent Lang are something in one. They've lost one game. The one game they lost, that is the team now that they've also lost, and it's a 3-team. It's 2 pools, 10 teams, round robin. Jones and Lang need that team to lose. They need to win out their last 3 games, and they will get the bye into the semifinals. If everybody holds serve through this point, Jennifer Jones and Brent Lang will be in the playoffs, but will have to play in the semi-quarterfinal match.
Yes.
Because they're not quarterfinals, because there's only 2 of them. So that's the situation right there. I believe it's Estonia that they are tied with, but Scott, you'll correct me real quick on that. So that's kind of our update for the mixed doubles worlds. But what is by a lot of margins more important is the senior world championship. Howard Rahala on the men's side, he is 4-1 in his pool, 3 men's pools at the World Seniors. He's 4-1, hasn't qualified yet, but in very good shape for him. But even more important than that, the great Sherry Anderson continues to roll. Her team is 5-0. They have qualified for the playoffs. They beat Ling in Hong Kong this morning for us here in North America. Mm-hmm. So they are through to the playoffs. Hopefully another world championship for Sherry Anderson, because this is her last time going, at least for a year. She didn't get out of Saskatchewan this year. Mm-hmm. So hopefully another one for her. So that's kind of the situation on the world stage. Scott, you were able to pull up here what's going on at the mixed doubles.
So Jones and Lang 5-1, Estonia also 5-1, with Jennifer Dodds and Bruce Mowat in third at 4-2 there. And then Australia. So yes, there are, what did you say, 10 teams?
10 teams in each pool, yeah.
So there's 9 games to play, so 3 games remaining. Still a chance for all the teams with 3 losses. Constantini and Armand are 3-3 right now.
It's a good field.
It's a really good field, yeah. On the B side, Japan 6-0 leading, Norway 5-1, and the US 5-1. Pretty good field.
Yeah, so again, our apologies for not getting a full preview out. We'll do a bit of a recap next week once we have results from both the World Mixed Doubles and the World Seniors happening over there in Korea.
That's right.
And so time difference isn't great for watching live for us, but hey, everyone's having a good time from all accounts.
Yeah, exactly. Time difference not great. Busy, as you said, with other things and life, and but we're following along as best we can.
Yes. So let's move on to what has been the biggest getter of attention in Canadian curling over the last little bit. That is the revised rules for Olympic qualification that came forth from Curling Canada about 10 days ago or so now. This also impacts Scotties and Brier qualification. So let's run through it real quick. So I assume most people have heard by now what's going on, but just make sure we're all on the same page here. The Olympic qualification process is a little different. The trials is moving up a week from what it was. Not much.
A lot of extra time, eh?
It's moving up a week. There will be 8 teams at the Roar of the Rings. 7 of them will be predetermined from a mix of Brier Scotties champions from the previous 2 years. Those individual teams do have to finish top 6 at the World Championship in order to get that berth into the trials. That is a holdover from past years. Subsequently, the other 5 pre-qualified teams will come out of CTRS points from individual seasons, 1 from each, and then a cumulative 2-season one. So those are your other 5 spots to the champions, and then the 8th spot will be from the pre-trials, and the qualification of that has not been determined as yet, but you would assume it's basically going to be CTRS points, some mathematical equation of that. For the Brier and the Scotties, something that we've talked about before, Scott, the wildcard teams are going to be determined before the Brier and the Scotties.
Yes.
So or before the provincial playdowns, excuse me. So not next year for all of them. They're going to stay with 3 teams. Next year, 2 of them are going to be determined based on the end of season CTRS points for this year. Yeah. The 3rd will be determined following provincial playdowns. But subsequent years, all 3 will be determined based off of that season's CTRS points. So going into the summer, you will know 4 teams at both the Brier and the Scotties, the defending champion, as well as your 3 wildcard teams. The 3 wildcard teams will not participate in provincial playdowns because this is probably the biggest change. Those 3 teams are not subjected to any residency rules.
That's right.
You do not have to have 3 members, either with birthright or living in a member association. You can come from wherever. So now there are 3 spots available, 2 teams for both national championship and Olympic qualifying without needing residency rules. Those, I think, are the main bullet points from this, but did I miss anything in that?
I don't think so. I think you mentioned it would be single season CTRS points that would qualify.
For the Brier and the Scotties.
But for the Olympics...
for a couple of the spots.
What I'm saying, it's 2-year CTRS standings. It's not just single year.
Oh, there's not one for the end of like 2023, 24?
There'll be one for the end of 23, 24, and then the rest, I'll say, combined 2-year CTRS standings. And then one team for 24, 25 that will be the 7th spot awarded.
Okay.
And then the pre-trials, which I think you mentioned.
Yeah.
That was just a lot of stuff that you said.
It's a lot going on.
It's a lot of stuff. This is, to me, the compromise, right? This is Curling Canada's compromise of, hey, you really want to form super teams, go for it, go nuts. This is your path to qualifying for the national championships and the World Championship subsequently, and the Olympics. If you want to form a super team, go for it. So will be able to get into all these events theoretically, right? So you form a team with one person from each province, and you go spieling together all fall, and then in the hopes that in the next season your team will qualify. Because you put a team together for, let's say, 23, 24, then you won't be able to qualify for that year's Brier if you don't meet the residency requirements.
Correct, yeah. So it's really a 2-year game if you are going to do that, or you just be Brad Gushu and already be the champion, and then it's not really an issue for you.
Yeah.
So they're covered at this point. Anyway, moving forward, not that I think this is a rule for Brad Gushu.
No.
What it does remind me of, though, Scott, is a little bit with the pregnancy thing, where that was a dumb rule, obviously, but this is something specific for those top teams. This is not something that the Suzanne Berts of the world are necessarily going to be able to capitalize on. This is for the highest level, and it kind of models a little bit what we see elsewhere, where you take the best individual players and you just stick them together. That's what a lot of countries are doing. Now, Canada has the opportunity to do this if they want to, or the players themselves have the opportunity to do this independent of where they live across the country. One difference I would suggest is, as Bryant Reeves told us, it's a pretty big country. And at some point, you kind of want to be around the people you're playing with. This is the one thing that I think residency rules might have got right, is that I think it's important to practice with the people you're playing with, to be around them a little bit. So if you're scattered all over the country and you're only showing up and playing at events, I do wonder how that manifests, but let's see. Let's have somebody try it.
Yeah,
let's see what happens.
That's it. You can't come to a conclusion about something until you've experimented. And this will be the big test, right? And we'll see if the teams that I'm going to say that these teams, Curling Canada, in my opinion, is envisioning that these teams will come out of their high performance centers, be they here in Ottawa or in Edmonton.
Sure.
That said, like, if you're doing that and you're having people live at the high performance centers, maybe they could just all live there and be part of.
They could have the provincial representation.
But anyway, what it does is also gives a spot like guaranteed in the national championship, such that Curling Canada can advertise who's going to be there.
Yeah.
One of the big selling points about getting a Team Canada into the men's event was that, hey, there's a team, a bankable team that we know we can advertise around for next year. Sponsors like that.
I think fans like it too.
Fans like knowing it.
Because if you look at the schedule when it comes out for pretty much every event, Team Canada's games are highlighted and the host province games are highlighted. So, and obviously that schedule comes out, or draw schedule comes out usually before most of the teams are known, or all the teams are known. At least this used to be the case. And so now you can say, all right, here are four main teams, and you can set it up so that you have at least one of those teams going each draw, if you want to. And so you can have kind of your feature teams and set it up so the draw schedule can be balanced, and you can just have more time to do that rather than waiting until the provincial playdowns are done.
Right. And then the way it's been done with the ranking the pools based on current year points, you can come up with a different way to do it, where the top three that pre-qualify are maybe given the top three seeds along with Team Canada.
Yeah, so those are your top four. They're in both separate pools, and you rank it that way.
And then come the rankings afterwards. So so this is like splitting the baby a bit is maybe a bad metaphor, but that's the way I see it. I also see this as, hey, David Murdoch's coming. He's gonna make some super teams, quote unquote super teams, that will train together and go spieling. This is a way to get those teams in to the big events. What I think would be interesting is if somebody who maybe has a bunch of FU money and wants to throw it at some players to train independently of Curling Canada and have them form their own super team separate from the big structure.
Right.
We haven't seen it happen anywhere else, but there hasn't been as many curlers in other places.
But the structure is automatic. If you win, you're in the structure.
Yeah.
Right, so someone would have to decline
their invite into the...
Or I guess there's nothing stopping. I mean, the Brad Gushu has other sponsors, so I guess you could have another big sponsor. But it would be more the seed money to get somebody into the structure if you wanted to go about it that way.
I just think it would be funny to have some other team be like, just beat out one of these super pre-selected teams, to be like, actually, no, we're going to do our own thing.
Right. But we don't know. I mean, we still don't know if David Murdoch is going to pick teams. This is an avenue through which teams could still self-select. There has been no indication that is going to be forthcoming. And David Murdoch was clearly involved in this in some capacity. He's quoted in it with a bit of a nonsense quote, which we will talk about. It's one of the only things that I kind of don't like about this, because overall, I really do like this structure. It makes the playdowns more interesting. It makes teams earn their subsequent spots, if that makes any sense. Like, Carson Sturmey seems like a nice guy. Nothing against Carson Sturmey, but part of me thinks, don't you want to make your debut after winning the province? right? Like
Yeah.
Kevin Koe doesn't need to win Alberta again. He's fine.
Yeah.
Bottcher doesn't need to win Alberta. Whatever. Like they can take the spot, and the Purple Heart this way maybe retains some value for guys who you win that, you make your debut at the Brier. The provincial associations, I would assume, like this, sure, they're going to lose a couple of teams from their playdowns, but the playdowns retain a level of integrity that maybe in Alberta last year was lost a little bit in that final. Yeah, it was a fun game, but
who cares? Because both of them are making it.
Yeah, so this maybe ratchets up the pressure a little bit for those provincial playdowns. So I really like that. The Olympic stuff, I never had an issue with any of it. I don't know when you put the trials in a different spot. I don't think you want them earlier in the season, too much earlier in the season. You want everybody to have their legs.
Yeah.
And if you go the previous year, what is it? The Scotties and the Brier champion? But we don't want that.
No.
Like no one would go with that. I don't want it in May.
No.
So
I think the timing of it is fine, Sean.
Yeah.
You're right. What was the worry was, there's not enough turnaround to get all the Olympic stuff done, right? Like you need to, I don't know, do a bunch of tests and get visas and travel arrangements and housing and food and like all sorts of weird stuff. Right?
And that's the sort of stuff that should not be on the players. That should be the infrastructure of Curling Canada that does all that. The players should be told, go practice, go do whatever you need to do. Here's the supports that are available to you. But if people need tickets, family needs travel arrangement, no, that's on us. We don't, or the COC or anyone else. It should not be on the players themselves.
No, but then, but it does give a little extra time for the organization then to take care of that stuff,
for sure,
right? Because it's still a time crunch.
Yeah.
That said, they moved it a week earlier. Whatever, is that
2 weeks earlier from what it used to be? A week earlier from last time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So maybe that'll have some impact. Who knows? I had something to say and I forgot it because we're talking to each other in person.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me talk about this one thing that David Murdoch said in the release here.
Yeah.
The quote is that he's supportive of this because you have the actual quote here where he says having teams chasing points through playing in multiple events for the first half of the season to improve their chances for a wild card berth really detracts from the time they could be spending training on the ice or in the gym, as well as resting and recovering from events and travel. Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Goes on to say this will give teams with high performance ambitions a much better opportunity to better plan their training and playing schedule around peaking for the national and international competitions. Here's the thing, though. You still do have to chase points a little bit, but for the next season, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a team that's going without any sort of residency affiliation, you do kind of have to be concerned about points throughout the course of the season.
You do, yeah.
Now, you could say, well, you could just chase later in the season, but you can't because there's nothing after Scotties Brier. So if he's saying that those teams can train to peak at that time of year and be less fatigued, okay, but in doing so, are they not perhaps throwing away their spot the next year if they don't win? So if you're doing that to go to the Scotties, go to the Brier, you've planned yourself. It is unlikely that you're going to be top 3 of CTRS the next season if you are reducing your schedule in the way that he is indicating here.
I think you're right. I mean, everybody's going to play in the slams.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of a given. And then it's like cherry picking the big events in between, right?
Yeah. So I wonder,
rather than just like go all of them. And I think that what he was talking about was Carsten Sturmey's team.
They just played every week.
To get in, which is fair under the rules, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, then they don't get any more points the rest of the year. And the quote unquote big dog teams are able to still get points from being invited to those slams. And
yeah, that's true.
You do get points for the Scotties and Brier and for the international events that come thereafter.
That's true. I mean, Champions Cup going away though.
Yeah.
So got to see. That was another thing. Changes to the Grand Slam. Hooray for that. We'll talk about that at some point too. They took
summer episode.
Yeah, they took parts of what we wanted. But the idea here of not chasing points, I do wonder how if it'll lead to a different formula that privileges perhaps more the slams a little bit more, or something like the Penticton Spiel, or with the the ladies classic or whatever, those
the autumn classic,
that one, the Stu Cells, like those events, if there's an even greater concentration of top teams at events in order to maximize the formula for CTRS points, that'll be a potential offshoot of this. But that's cool, whatever. That doesn't necessarily bother me. I think if I was a middle class player trying to move up, that would bother me. But again, we've seen this concentration at the top level across Canada already. Just look at the number of individual players who have played in Scotties and Brier's final over the past few years. It's not a lot of people.
Many, no.
So the concentration's already happening. This is an acknowledgement of that. While to me, keeping the things about playdowns and the national championships that I very much enjoy.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, I remembered, is that this gives the chance for players who live in a province like Newfoundland the chance to compete for a provincial title realistically. And so what that does, we've seen it in Newfoundland when Brad Gushu was wearing the Maple Leaf, that the amount of registered teams for the playdowns goes way up. Yeah. So maybe
we see this in Alberta too now. Maybe Manitoba.
Thing. Yeah, without the sort of alpha dog there. I think about BC when I was living out there, and it was Jim Cotter winning every time.
Sure.
There was teams that would go that were very, very good, but they just didn't. They just were like that much worse than Jim Cotter and his team at that time. So it gives like a real chance to reinvigorate the grassroots.
Yeah,
hopefully,
or that middle class, like someone like Danielle Smith, maybe, right? Rachel Homan, potentially, you would expect to probably get one of those spots at some point. I haven't looked at the points right now, but you'd expect that she'd be in the top 3 a lot of years. So Ontario becomes a lot more interesting on the women's side.
Yes, Danielle Inglis. Right?
Danielle Inglis, excuse me. So Danielle Smith. We were watching the news before this, and Danielle Smith was doing the press conference in Calgary for the new arena. Danielle Inglis, excuse me. She becomes somebody who maybe has a better chance, or the Holly Duncans, like that. Those types of teams go into provincial championships, and it's not everyone has to beat Rachel. So that's the sigh of SpongeBob, Scott.
The sigh of SpongeBob says that our time is nearly up.
Is nearly up. So I think just some of the provincial championships maybe become a little more interesting. I'm encouraged by this. I would say that some of the headlines are not fully accurate. I don't think these are huge changes. I don't think these are mega changes, anything like that. I think they're improvements around the edges that maintain, as I said earlier, the core of what I like.
Yeah. Real quick, I don't know if you said it. Maybe you did when I was looking something up, but best 2 out of 3 for the Olympic berth.
Yeah, we did not talk about that. So the playoff format for Scotties and Brier is also changing. No more Friday Fun Fest. Well, still a Friday Fun Fest, but it's first.
Yeah.
So Friday afternoon is the Fun Fest. 1 versus 2 in the 2 pools will play each other. Winner to the 1-2 game. Losers will play the third place teams that night. That becomes elimination games for a spot in the 3-4 game. I like that change. I'm good with that.
Makes more sense, yeah.
In the Olympics or the trials, round robin, top 3 teams are in. Second and third play a semifinal game. And then a best 2 out of 3 in the final. Another note, too, at least for the Scotties and the Brier, no tiebreakers.
No tiebreakers.
So clearly Vic was in the room when they were having these discussions. So no tiebreakers. That aligns, of course, with what the WCF is doing.
Yeah.
And then for the Olympic trial, Scott, as you say, a 2 out of 3 final. I don't know if this might be the one thing I don't really like, just because it takes some of that drama away. That Tracy Fleury, Jennifer Jones game was so bonkos that if that was just the first of 3, maybe it doesn't feel, or maybe Jennifer Jones probably makes the shot in the 10th end.
Yeah.
And maybe Tracy Fleury makes the shot in the 11th end because there's slightly less pressure. But I feel like it's just setting us up to root for a split in the first 2 to get to that 3. But I understand it. This is where other countries are, right? The United States is this. Switzerland's a best out of 7. So I'm not necessarily surprised. I think it's a little worse for TV. So I'm mildly surprised on that perspective. But it's a longer playoff in your biggest event, therefore more revenue all around. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's not as good to not have I know the winner is going to be crowned at this time.
Yeah.
Right? Because that for TV is great.
Yes.
And in playoffs, we're in hockey, basketball playoffs right now. Everybody loves a game 7, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves it. Well, we had a game 7 and we just shifted it to maybe happen instead of having it definitely happen.
Yeah.
That said, this is a move because they want the best team, and in a longer series, the best team tends to win. 2 out of 3 is still a small enough series that an upset could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal of Curling Canada is to win medals, and the goal of Own the Podium, which is literally called Own the Podium, is to win medals. This is a step in that direction.
For sure.
Maybe we get to a 7-game series. If so, God help me. I don't think I could do that. But that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't love it, but I understand it.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see the logistics of it too, in terms of TV schedule. Do you do semifinals like Friday nights or one Friday night? And I'm just curious how the logistics of that are going to work, because obviously you're going to need like the Sunday evening slot for a potential game 3. If there's 2 game 3s, are they going on simultaneously? Like the TV end of it is interesting. So yeah, not really thrilled with it, but overall pretty pleased with the changes here.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be our rapid fire on the changes. So let us know what you think of these, what I will call minor changes on the fringes of the Olympic and the national championship qualification process. You can reach out, gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com. All the social medias at Game of Stones Pod for Instagram and Twitter. Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. Head on over to gameofstonespod.com. Past episodes are all there, plus a link to the merch. Wore my hat. A Game of Stones dad hat. Not a hat, or not a dad, but I wore the dad hat.
Nice.
I like it.
Fits good, eh?
Yeah, it's comfy.
Yeah, and it looks good out there on the ice if you're a hat curler.
Yeah, which if you're bald like we are, gets a little chilly without a hat.
Sure does.
So gotta wear it. So so check all that stuff out. We will be back next week with another new episode, and I promise we will be back next week. With that, we'll have results on our event, Scott. No spoilers, but we've done okay-ish.
Okay-ish, yeah. We're going to do a little lineup shakeup. But well, all good.
Yeah, so we'll be back with all that. Hope everybody is doing well out there. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next week. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.